All right, so we left off last time talking about how the bank could be in trouble following a fixed exchange rate regime. And so we had country A and country B. So I'm going to start off there and kind of recap that, make sure you guys are good with putting a little more details into your notes here. All right, so let's see. So if we have a free market, which means dollars currency is a floating exchange rate regime, then once we have more Bs, more bondos, more Bs for A implies depreciation of bondos. So that was our supply and demand if it was free to go. With intervention, the central bank, I'm just going to put CD here, Central Bank of Mondo, sells A's on the market to maintain a fixed par rate, to maintain par. Then we've got the speculators. The key point is that the Central Bank of Mondo only has a finite amount of Mondo dollars, of A's, of our WANA dollars. Mondo dollars are no problem. They can just print them off if they need to. So once they're starting to run short, we've got speculators who are going to borrow B's and buy A's. When they do that, they're in a pretty good situation. So if they don't break the bank and the currency stays stable, let's just say 1A equals 1B is our fixed exchange rate. How much money are they losing? If they took a gamble, they borrowed B's to buy A's, and they're trying to break the bank in the next month or so, and it turns out they were wrong. They were able to ride it out. The currency stayed with its fixed exchange rate. They had enough. How much money are they out? Not much, right? Because they just have the A's at the fixed rate. They're going to have some transaction costs or maybe a little bit of interest if they borrowed B's. They might have some carrying costs of interest that they owe the bank. But really, they get some minimal losses with the speculators. Minimal losses. So that's kind of a good little deal for them because they have big gains if the central bank runs out of A's. Then they're forced to devalue. Forced to devalue the currency. And so maybe now they have to do 1A equals 2 B's. So we call it a devaluation when we have a fixed exchange rate. And so, for example, if they borrow 100 B's, they get a loan or something, borrow 100 B's, that will convert into 100 A's just by using the exchange rate. And then if it devalues, after devaluation, how many B's can you get?
200?
200. So after devaluation, take your 100 A's and convert back to 200 B's and double your money. So it's not a very stable position if we start to look at it kind of almost like in a game theory standpoint. We've got minimal losses if we do it, and a large upside. And so countries and currencies have found themselves under this speculative attack, especially in today's day and age. I think with the internet and otherwise, it would be even quicker to close the gap. All right, so questions there? Yeah.
If you convert your 100 A's back into like your 200 B's, though, aren't you still going to that kind of defeat the purpose because it's devalued now?
You're going to be able to buy, at the time they do the currency, prices have, like inflation and other things haven't adjusted. So instead of buying, if you could buy 100 cans of Coca-Cola, now you can buy 200 cans of Coca-Cola. We're going to break the bank like that fast, and then it's all going to be out there, and then you can convert it back to other currencies or buy something there. Okay, anything else there? All right, so let's look at Thailand. Another example in the early 90s. Example, the early 1990s in Thailand. Anybody know what the currency of Thailand is? What it's called? Nope. The baht. B-A-H-T, the Thai baht. So I got to go to Thailand again shortly after this. So we used to have a ton of Malaysians and Thai people at Iowa State. A lot of graduate students would come. And so I was in graduate school in 1993, I guess is when I started. And then what happened in Malaysia and some other things, we stopped having students all of a sudden. And it was due to this currency crisis with exchange rates. Of course, I didn't quite understand all the details I do today, but all of a sudden they weren't getting an American education any longer. Okay, so if we do a quick little graph here, so we've got the baht, which I guess I'll just go with B here, so not to confuse it with the B over there. So the baht, and if we do the exchange rate that way, is this baht per dollar or dollar per baht if I'm measuring baht here? Dollar per baht. Okay. So when we have dollars here, then it was foreign currency from domestic currency. So here we've got dollar per baht. And we had the exchange rate at par of about 4 cents. So it was 4 pennies. 4 pennies for 1 baht dollar. All right, so then there was exchange rate pressure, a decreasing demand for baht, and that would have caused the baht to go down if it was a free market to 2 pennies. That's half. But they didn't through an intervention. They were able to keep fueling this. And so this is with intervention. So S2 to keep it at par. And so they're trying their best. The currency wants to devalue, but they're not letting it. Okay, so here's what kind of fueled part of that story is that in the United States, interest rates at the time were around, let's say 7%. this is how they got into trouble here. So USA, we had interest equal to 7%, and in Thailand, we had the Thai interest, I'll put T and U or something here, is 11%. All right, so now the banks of Thailand had an idea. What looks like a good idea if United States is 7%, interest rates in Thailand are at 11%, the exchange rate's fixed at 4, what could Thai banks do to make some good returns? Invest in the US, that would be 7% versus 11. So they don't want to invest in the US, but what does a Thai banker maybe want to do? Here's your Thai banker, banker Thai. So Banker Thai is making loans to his customers at 11%, right? So loans to customers at 11%. Here's your Thai businessman waiting to make a deal, making this thing. Ask me what that thing is.
Right.
This is the Thai businessman. Thai business person. Bryce.
If the person would want to borrow money from the US at 7% and then loan it out at 11%.
They would, but they're not very sophisticated in maybe working out how that would work out. So the banker could facilitate it. What could the banker do? Yeah, so why can't the banker who's in the banking business go borrow from America and pay back, right? And be the intermediary, kind of an arbitrage opportunity, right? So now we have the lenders getting involved with some of that borrowing, which is kind of similar to what you were saying. So, so key point. It's kind of a long key point. When the baht devalued to two pennies, when they broke the bank, so this is a true story. So when they broke the bank, they were still having to force that the bank, the commercial bank, maybe I should put Banker Thai here. Let's call it BT Bank, just so you guys are clear that I'm not talking about the central bank versus the commercial bank here. They're all kind of related. So BT Bank still owes dollars. Still owes dollars to the USA lender, which now costs double baht. So suppose the interest rate of 7% that we're working with is a payment of $100. So whatever your value is. So you owe your lender $100 in America. You previously previously paid 25 baht per dollar times 100 dollars. Cross out the dollars gives you 2,500 baht. After we figured the exchange rate, so inverting the exchange rate, you paid 2,500 bahts is what it was costing you, and now it's doubled. So now it is 5,000 baht. And this effectively makes your loan not 7%, but 14%. This effectively makes your loan 14% interest. Okay, so this is just like a little piece of the puzzle of how the banking system can get upside down fast. Now, what's this banker going to do? Got to go bankrupt, got to get bailed out by the central bank, lender of last resort. So all of this was going on as part of it and contributed to these problems. Okay, are you guys, any questions? That's kind of the general gist of this. How many of you know who George Soros is? You heard that name? So he was kind of famous. JC, what did you know who he is?
The guy in
Okay. So probably one of the more famous cases, and I found a nice little video that we're not going to watch the whole thing, but I'll watch part of this to kind of fill in the blanks here. Let's see. How George Soros broke the bank. Did I do that wrong? Let's see. Here, this one.
If I gave you $25,000 today,
You guys need to listen to this.
pay 2 years off your mortgage, escape the rat race for a while, buy a new car, if you give me just 90 seconds of your time right now.
No way, man.
September 16, 1992. Speculators in England and Europe remember this day as
All right, here we go. We're
this
gonna
is
start
part
it.
of the story where the main character enters, George Soros. At the time, Soros was already a rich man in his 60s, but he was not well known to the public as he is today. Better known today as a man involved in politics, Soros was a prominent investor since the 1970s. During this time period, he founded his very own hedge fund, specializing in prediction of big market events, while sometimes acting as a catalyst to introduce them. Soros was aware that everyone in their role was ready to bet big against the rich man, but he needed a catalyst to get things rolling. Starting in August of 1992, Soros and his hedge fund began building a massive position against the British pound. He began shorting the currency by borrowing millions and billions of British pounds from big banks, and then immediately selling them to German firms in the open forex market. His hope was that the British pound would decline, and in turn he would use his strengths to repurchase the pounds at a smaller rate, returning the borrowed money to the banks and pocketing the difference as profit. By the end of August, he and his hedge fund had built a position with 1.5 billion pounds, but its efforts were not enough. The pound had barely moved. Soros needed a spark to inflame the market and further increase his position. He got just what he needed that night on September 16, 1992, in what was otherwise a seemingly nonchalant statement. A report was published in which the German president of the Bundesbank, Professor Helmut Schulze, stated he does not rule out the possibility that even after the alignment and the cut in German interest rates, one or two currencies could come under pressure. This was all that was needed. That morning, the report had made it to Soros' New York desk, and the entire forex market saw what was clearly there. The 1 to 2 currencies mentioned must be the British pound as one. The market understood England was unable to artificially prevent the currency from collapsing. Soros' hedge fund, known as the Quantum Fund, immediately responded. Remember, they had been building their short position already in the months prior. Quantum's senior member, Sebastian Milani, writes in his book titled More Money to God, in which he relives that day's events. He knew that morning that the $1.5 billion bet was about to pay out, and they considered adding to it. Soros supposedly responded by suggesting a different strategy, stating, "Go for the jugular." Instead of slowly building up their short position, the fund essentially used Helmut's hope as the catalyst and began to short self-accounting that morning at a rate never before seen. By the end of the day, the total short position by Soros and his people totaled $10 billion. They planned to short sell even more, $15 billion. As Europe swept, Soros borrowed and sold pounds from anyone that was willing to lend to him. Other funds got motivated and began following suit. By the time the London markets had opened, tens of billions of pounds had been sold. The Bank of England was about to have its worst day in history. At 8:40 a.m., British officials responded by buying £1 billion in an attempt to defend the currency. The action had no effect. The entire war was now settled, and the British government didn't have enough buying power to stop it. It was supposedly estimated that the British spent $27 billion buying up the currency in attempts to stop it from free falling. By 9 a.m., the finance minister, Norman Lamont, spoke to the Prime Minister, John Major, and stated that he couldn't possibly buy enough to keep the price propped up. There was only one option left, and that was to increase interest rates dramatically, which in theory was supposed to attract speculators to the pound. At 11 a.m., after an emergency meeting, the Brits announced they would increase interest rates from 10% to 12%. That was an astounding, shocking move. But guess what? It actually did nothing to stop the move. Lamont, in a panic, headed to the Prime Minister's office to figure out what to do. This led him to increase the interest rate once again from 12% to 15%. That's 5% in 1 day. Insane. Once again, this actually came
Did that in 1 day.
Soros had smelled victory from his best prosecution. At this point, everyone could see where this was heading. At 7:30 p.m. that night, Lamont held a news conference where they considered Britain announced they would be leaving the ERM. Soros and the speculators had won. The pound had fell 15% against the mark and 25% against the U.S. dollar. In total, the value of Soros' quantum fund instantly grew from $15 billion to $19 billion. In a month that followed, the fund grew to $22 billion. Now remember, this is a hedge fund, so Soros and his partners most likely collected at least 20% of that, essentially $1.4 billion. And that, my friends, is how one man can make more profit in 1 day than some nations collecting taxes in 1 whole year. When someone wins on Wall Street, someone else loses. In this specific case, the circumstances were much more controversial. There was an enormous wealth transfer from hardworking British taxpayers to the pockets of George Soros. The cost to the British public totaled $3.3 billion, although many argued that the number was covered up, and the true cost was much higher. Losing billions of tax dollars is usually pretty routine for politicians, but this was different. There was a clear display of incompetence. The British politicians went out that Wednesday and made multiple announcements regarding the interest rate and attempts to save the currency, only to have it backfire in their faces the very next day. It was a huge publicity blow, and the events destroyed the credibility of John Major and his party. Margaret Thatcher turned out to be right. The UK had no business propping up its currency at a time when hedge funds, led by a very small group of people, could effectively assemble more capital than the Bank of England. John Major and his party lost the next election, and the blow was so heartfelt that the party didn't win another election for more than a decade. Ultimately, the story proved one thing. Regulations can create unexpected loopholes, and someone more clever than the politicians will look to exploit them. George Soros' story is one that many will see lined with greed. How could one man in the world lead the charge against an entire superpower? How could one man line his pocket with a cool billion, taking from the regular, hardworking citizens of another, and in just 24 hours, amass a fortune that to many is unthinkable?
Okay, so we talked about greed with that stuff. We got a greed problem here. What caused the problem?
And government regulation that allowed it to happen.
Yeah. So was there a transfer from hardworking British taxpayers to George Soros? Did he steal the money?
No, he bought it.
Yeah. Do the taxpayers have the right to be upset? Might they point towards George Soros and be upset at him? Yeah. where should the blame go, right? So the blame will usually kind of head towards the business that did it, but really I think this is a clear example that the government policy is the one that set it up in the first place. Now, can we keep greed of George Soros out of the picture? Sure, you don't have a policy where the government's there, and now George will have to be greedy with other hedge funds that are at each other like animals, right? And so he's going to lose money, he's going to make money, but it's subject to other people doing voluntary things. All right, so here's Amazon. This is kind of a nice little thing that he kind of compares to.
Congress about the so-called dark underside of capitalism. How someone like Jeff Bezos could amass a fortune enough to help out millions while paying his workers hundreds of times less than what he makes annually. The truth is that Amazon, at the very least, provides a good to them. They give hundreds of thousands of steady jobs. They give millions, if not billions, an improvement in the quality of their life. Their ability to order whatever you want for cheap prices and have it at your doorstep will vary in scale. The company that was built on people voluntarily in exchange for service. George Soros' story is a little different. Soros essentially did that using clever people. So unlike Amazon, his money from this particular action came from taxpayers who had no control where their money went. It matters worse, the ability to earn did not go to building company was to give those people a job or service, went straight to his pocket in a country far from British Isles. And it's probably why many see the story and are disgusted. Whatever your opinion may be, please make sure you comment below. What are your thoughts on George Soros and taxpayers?
Is this part of capitalism? Is he a private company, or was a private company? I mean, the individual, so he has that, but his company was a private company. It wasn't a government company, is what I'm trying to say, I guess. So this is capitalism, but it's really mixed capitalism, right? I think this is an example, again, where it's not free market capitalism. It was government-intervened capitalism. So we sometimes refer to that as a mixed system, where we don't really live in a capitalist society or in a free market system. We have this, and that's why Allison's trying to make some of the moves to say, hey, I think the world would actually be a better place if we didn't have well-intentioned policies involved. All right, comments, questions on video? Going to wrap up today. We're basically close to being done with the chapter, but there's these the text boxes that I want to do a little round robin reading. So if you don't have good eyes, move up closer to the front right now. We're going to round robin. So we'll start at the back. JC, you want to start us back, and then we'll go Isaac, Dakota, and kind of snake our way up to the front. So if you don't have good eyes, move on up. We'll switch every paragraph.
The large U.S. current accountants in recent years was 2.4% of GDP. Raises for several reasons. First, because a large part of the deficit comes from a trade deficit. We can conclude that at current exchange rate, foreign demand for U.S. exports is far less than American demand for imports. Our supply and demand analysis. Our foreign exchange market suggests that low demand for U.S. exports and high U.S. demand for imports may lead to a decline in the value of the U.S. dollar. Yeah.
Second, a large current account deficit means that the United States is becoming more indebted to foreigners. This borrowing will have to be paid back at some point in the future. When the bill comes due, Americans will not be as rich as they otherwise would be.
On the other hand, a large current account deficit indicates large capital inflows into the United States. These capital inflows might be funding highly attractive investment opportunities in the United States. These investments might increase U.S. wealth so much in the future that even when foreigners are paid back, on net Americans are richer.
So give me an interpretation of this last paragraph here. These capital inflows might be funding highly attractive investment opportunities. What's going on there? Why are they? Why is it helping when we think about our investment opportunities? What's the effect on interest rates? Higher or lower? when foreigners are coming to the United States and investing. We have a supply of loanable funds or a demand for loanable funds. If we think about it back to macro class, the market for loanable funds, there's a demand for loanable funds, which includes the government in some cases, and a supply of loanable funds. So funds that Americans can use for loans, people who want to borrow money is here, people who are supplying money are here. When we have large capital inflows, what's happening in this market? Supply is increasing, meaning shift to the left or shift to the right?
Right.
To the right. And so that's bringing interest rates down. So the point here is that now, in general, interest rates are lower in the United States, but we have all this money, and there might be some attractive investments. Our companies are able to take advantage of that and maybe do some profitable things. I wanted to do one more thing. All right, who's up next there? Olivia, then Kaylin, then McKenna. Will? I might call that a run-on sentence, but so now, good. Go ahead, McKenna, you might as well finish it off here. However,
the euro is still seen by many as an important step in the creation of a more united and powerful Europe. And this political consideration has created strong support for retaining monetary union.
all right, so we'll pick up there on Thursday just to finish up a couple last things with the chapter, and then we'll be doing our review session on Thursday as well.